Great. I hope you guys are excited, interactive today, because our guest speaker is going to be really great. Jon Black has founded, built, and successfully sold several companies, including Groviv, a high-tech farming startup which sold to a public company. His former clients include Coca-Cola, RJR Nabisco, RCA, Novell, IXL, Banner Health, St. Jude's, Duke University, New Skin Enterprises, and hundreds of other top-tier companies. Mr. Black is a sought-after business consultant and SME, or subject matter expert, having spoken at industry conventions both nationally and internationally, been interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, quoted in Forbes and Entrepreneur magazines, and featured regionally on NBC, ABC, Fox TV, and nationally on CNNfn, CNN.com, MSNBC, and many other media outlets. Jon is currently serving as the CEO and serves on the board of directors for EarthSpring, a health and wellness company with a mission to help millions of people heal using non-addictive plant-based medicine. So please welcome Jon Black.
Thank you, Russ. I met Russ recently and love his humble attitude, right? I mean, he's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm just a little guy and that kind of thing. And I asked Russ to give me some introductions to maybe some of his contacts. And I have been having lunch meetings and breakfast meetings, and the list goes on and on. He knows his stuff. So I'm honored to be here, and thank you for asking. I appreciate that. Next thing I just wanted to mention, I'm going to ask my wife to stand up for you. This is my wife, Shelly. And for anybody that actually is or has been or has ever heard of entrepreneurs, they know that the real muscle is in the significant other, the spouse. Because let me tell you, when your wife is calling you from the grocery store and saying, you know, can I buy groceries today? Because you don't have a check coming in like most people do in a job. And she does that and just says, hey, you know, I'm going to support you. I'm here, right? That is the kind of person that Shelly is. So any success that I've had is because of her. So thank you. I am going to be talking about several different companies that I've been involved with, that I either founded or otherwise was an owner in. And I kind of want you to think about maybe why, right? So why did Jon get involved in this company, or why did he get involved in this company? And I think having our why is super critical. Let me tell you why I'm here today, okay? And the reason is because I was sitting in those chairs, wow, lots of years ago, decades ago. And I was a student, and I was bound and determined to be an entrepreneur. From the time I was a little boy, I had paper routes. I was selling prescriptions to the local paper. I used to win bikes and trips to Disneyland, and I had a lawn mowing business, and I'd ride my bike and, you know, carry the lawnmower and all the other stuff on my bike. Just always had stuff going on, and that was just in my blood. I wanted to do it. My dad was a professor at a university, just absolute academia, and he didn't like that at all. And so it was interesting how I kind of said, you know what, this is for me. So I took an entrepreneur class. I went to BYU. I took an entrepreneur class at BYU, and there was an entrepreneur speaker series. And I had this aha. I was sitting where you're sitting, and I looked up the speaker, and I said, one day I'm going to be that speaker. And I just told myself, I committed to myself, this is what I'm going to do. And if that opportunity ever comes up, I'm going to be there. And I'm going to hopefully help the folks that helped me so much, right? That were mentors. And I mean, nobody gets to where they are without the help of others. And I've had tremendous help. So that's why I'm here, right? That's my why. To hopefully help you guys, and you know, maybe one of you guys has the same experience, and down the road, you're standing here instead of me. So I want to, first of all, just recommend a couple of books that I think are terrific entrepreneurial books. One is called The Zigzag Principle. It was written by a good friend of ours, and his name is Rich Christensen. Excellent, really, really good book for entrepreneurs. Another one that I just life-changing for me was The Innovator's DNA. It's a postscript to The Innovator's Dilemma, which you've probably heard a lot about. Jeff Dyer, Hal Gregerson, Clayton Christensen, phenomenal. If you want to know how to come up with ideas for businesses, read this book. It's amazing. So let me tell you a little bit about, again, kind of brief career history. And the first one was R.I. Weber Company. So I served a mission for my church in Mexico. And one of the other missionaries that I met there told me, he said, hey man, one day you're going to work for my family company. And I was from California, and he was from Connecticut. And I said, dude, I follow the sun. I don't think there's sun in Connecticut. And you know, thanks but no thanks. Fast forward, you know, we're buddies at BYU, double dating, all that kind of stuff. He graduates, goes to his family company, and then recruits me, and I end up going to R.A. Weber Company. What did we do? We were a manufacturer's representative. We sold commodity raw materials to manufacturers. And by that, I mean that we sold materials that everybody else had too, right? And in fact, the pricing was listed in the Wall Street Journal. So how do you sell something to somebody and it's the same product as everybody else, right? That's a question. My why for jumping in with R.I. Weber Company and my buddy, it was to the two of us and two office staff. We ended up doing just under $20 million a year with the two of us and just had an absolute blast. He was so fun. And his you know, review, like, let's do a review on your work was, you know, we hadn't seen each other in a couple months, and we'd go into the office, and he's like, what do you got going on, man? And I would tell him, and that was like a performance review, right? So it was really, really cool. But my why was to learn business on somebody else's dime, to cut my teeth in business and learn as much as I could, and then I fully anticipated that one day I would jump off and start my own company. So what did I learn? I learned that business is about relationships of trust, building and maintaining relationships of trust. And you do that by doing what you say you're going to do over and over and over again. I didn't make my first sale at R.I. Weber Company for a year and a half. Are you kidding me? They were so patient with me, a year and a half. But then when I made that sale, I had built a relationship of trust to where after that, the guy bought from me, you know, on and on and on. And then I learned to ask better questions. And the questions that I asked, for example, was we represented manufacturers all over the world. And instead of just selling their stuff, I asked our manufacturer, well, what do you use for your raw materials? Oh, really? And then I would try to go source that. My territory was New England when I got started. Ended up selling all over the world, materials all over the world. So it was super, super fun. But again, it was just all about relationships of trust, doing what you say you're going to do. Those relationships open up and people start to say, hey, you know I can trust you. Now, one other thing that I wanted to mention in that company is I have 4 daughters, so, and now 5 grandkids. And so love all the Disney movies, and there's one on Aladdin where he goes, be yourself, right? You guys remember that. Be yourself. Don't try to be someone you're not, okay? And for me, what that meant was I didn't know anything about commodity raw materials, manufacturing industry. I knew nothing, zero. So that's exactly what I said when I went in and met a purchasing agent in that industry. I go, you know, I don't know anything about this business. You think you could, I don't know, maybe take me under your wing and help me out? I mean, I just have a lot to learn, right? And these guys would go, you know what? Let me show you the ropes. And they would teach me and teach me and teach me. And that would start to establish that relationship of trust. You know what, 6 years later, before I left, I think 6.5 years later, I was still saying the same thing. You know, I don't know that much about this industry. And I really kind of felt like that was always true, right? There's always guys that are smarter than me in any room. So be yourself and establish relationships of trust. So Get Proof is another company that I was involved with. And so my why there was what? Anybody remember? For IRIW company? Right, to learn on someone else's dime, right? There you go. So Get Proof. So all my growing up years, my mother was chronically ill. She was in and out of medical centers all the time. We said goodbye to her I don't know how many times because she wasn't supposed to last through the night. And, you know, interesting how growing up affects you, right? For me, what happened was I have 3 sisters, and we're all caregivers in our own way. Okay, I think that's interesting, right? I think it's interesting that that's kind of how it went down. But she was misdiagnosed, and I could go into a lengthy story, but it was kind of rough growing up in that environment, right? So I learned that I wanted to do something in the healthcare industry to help people. And in this case, it was a credentialing company, or in other words, we did very extensive background checks on doctors. The whole idea was to keep doctors out of operating rooms, bad doctors out of operating rooms, okay? So 54% of all malpractice payouts are paid by 5% of the physicians. They're the bad eggs in the system, and the reason they're still in the system is because they're making somebody money. And that's the only reason, right? So at the time, the government mandate was that each hospital or affiliation had to do a credentialing event or this extensive background check on doctors every 2 years. Problem was that he could be at Hospital X, cut off the wrong leg of a patient, operated on the wrong patient, be drunk in an operating room, and at Hospital X he gets kicked out, but he's got 24 affiliations. He's still practicing at Hospital Y, Z, A, B, and he's still got all these insurance companies that he's with. That's a problem, right? And so we created a continuous credentialing model wherein we were tracking 4 databases. They're called Sentinel events. Now this isn't just, you know, human error, right? This is being drunk in an operating room, okay? These are the 5% that I'm talking about. These are the bad eggs in the system. And we were monitoring these 4 databases, never been done before, and pushing that out to all of our clients. We had hundreds of clients nationwide, and they were the credentialing departments in the hospital. And so when we said, hey, if we built this, first of all, what do you think? And secondly, will you buy it? And they were like, oh my gosh, that would change the world. It would be unbelievable. You'd save so many lives, blah, blah, blah. And, well, will you buy it? Absolutely, 100% we'll buy it. So we made it, and then we went to sell our first one, and the credentialing department said, oh yeah, cool, awesome, man. We're so excited about this. This is awesome. Works amazing. It's just, wow, you guys have put millions of dollars into this. This is awesome. Let's just go up to the C-suite and get their buy-off on it. By the C-suite, I mean the executives, right? CEO, CFO, CXO, COO, those guys. So the men and women in the C-suite, we need to go up there and talk to them. Oh, well, you didn't tell me that before. So we went up to them, and guess what they said? Are you telling me that we have to get rid of a revenue-generating asset before we're government mandated to do so? Yes. No, thanks, man. We'd rather stick with the government mandates because they chose money over patient safety all day long. Happened one after another, after another, after another. It's just the way it is, right? So I was trying to help. My passion was, right, to save lives, to keep bad doctors out of operating rooms. And it was extremely frustrating. So a business, boom. And next business was, okay, let's do the same thing, but let's do it with reviews. Okay, and we'll let the public know. We've got all these databases that had never been done before. We'll let the public know who the good doctors are. Okay, and let's see, how do I, do you want to navigate for me? I just need that Trillion video.
this one. Yeah.
Funny how we see things differently. Take the word monster. To a 5-year-old, it looks like this. To a teenager, it looks like that. And a millionaire? Definitely like this. We asked a highly successful surgeon what his looked like. It wasn't this, or even this. What keeps him up at night is this, and that. Well, okay, let's back up a bit. First, this doctor who thousands of patients call Dr. Awesome. They love him, adore him, and would even have a national holiday pass if they could. But these people live here, offline. Problem is, we now search online. These four seem harmless, but online, they represent how the world sees Dr. Awesome. They attack his reputation like vicious monsters, painting Dr. Awesome to be not so awesome. Who are these monsters? Did they ever visit Dr. Awesome? Maybe, but no one really knows. Dr. Awesome is afraid because online reputations matter, and no one sees the opinions of his offline customers. But what if we could see offline opinions? What if verified customers wrote the majority of your reviews? What if you could be honestly represented online? Now you can. Terillian collects, validates, and broadcasts the opinions of your real customers. It's that simple. Whether your business is online or offline no longer matters. Everyone uses the internet to find you. Let the voices of your customers drive new business to your door. Call it Monster Insurance. Bring your offline online with Terillian.
So we started with the best doctors on the planet, right, to let the public know. But the public didn't, I mean, there's a lot of reviews out there that you don't have to be anywhere to do a review, right? Google reviews, I can do it anytime I want. Thank you. So anyway, long story short, I still had the passion, right, to help people find the right doctors that were not going to do what they did to my mom, and still kind of struggled with it, right? But again, all the while learning a lot. So let's talk about Groviv now. Groviv was a venture that I was involved in a while back. And the question is the status quo sustainable? Or at least it was when we started taking a look at this. This all started with a lunch. I had lunch with a guy who for 6 years had been trying to grow indoors using lights without the sun. And for 6 years, he wasn't able to be profitable. So I sat there and listened, and I said, this is fascinating, but it's not profitable. And so you're going to hear something that I say a lot, voice of the customer, right? VOC, voice of the customer. So what do you do when you don't know the answers? You just start asking folks, right? You start doing research first, and you start knocking doors and asking customers what they think. So is the status quo sustainable? I don't think so. I'm not going to read those to you. I think you can read them on your own. 75% of African farmland, though? 75%? Let me tell you, the soil in the world is not getting any better. In fact, it's getting way, way, way worse. 70% of all of our water supply used for irrigation. And China is really, really struggling to grow anything on their land. Interesting. 1.8 people use a drinking water source contaminated with feces. So this is all the research that we did to say, hey, is there something here, right? At some point, we came up with a vision, our why. Why are we doing this, okay? To feed and nourish the world. Why nourish? Why not just to feed the world? Well, because there are folks that have food, but there's no nutrients associated with that food. So this was our why, this was our vision, and it looks kind of like this, the evolution of farming. The picture that you see on the far right is an indoor farm in Chicago, and we just started touring indoor farms and essentially finding out, okay, why isn't this profitable? Why haven't you been able to make it profitable? But essentially the premise is you don't have to worry about weather. You don't have to worry about anything, any external force. You can control the environment and kind of play God with plants, right? You can grow it, and that's the whole idea. I talked to you about voice of the customer. This is actually from that book, Innovator's DNA, that I told you about. And so we started going out to customer after customer after customer, asking them. And again, this is the place in Chicago. Now, one thing that you notice, several levels that they're growing on in a very large facility, but they're about 6 feet apart. Why? Because the lights had too much heat. So you put them any closer together and it'd burn up the plants. Okay? Heat means energy, right? Energy costs money. That's why nobody was profitable. It boiled down to one thing, heat. And they were selling all of their produce as leafy greens to local grocery stores and restaurants. To me, that was not a viable market. The margins, there's not margins in it. So I believe in the animal Olympics. You put your leopards in the run events, your fish in the swimming events, and your eagles in the flying events. One time my daughter was really, really struggling, and she didn't do as well in school as some of her other daughters, and she was just, I said, don't even worry about it, man, you're good. Just find out what your event is and hang out there. Don't worry about what other people can or can't do. She ended up becoming this incredible artist that she didn't even know she had that talent. And next thing you know, her teachers in high school are going, I wish you would have taken an art class because you would have been my Sterling Scholar if you had taken any classes. Like, she's amazing. But she found what her event was, and I say, everybody do the same thing. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at, right? So if you're in the desert and you're starving, one question for you. Would you rather have a slice of a watermelon or a whole grape? Go ahead.
Watermelon.
Thank you, right? You'd rather have a slice of a watermelon. You're starving, right? So what I have done in my companies is I always look for people that were way smarter than me, and I offered them a slice of what could be a watermelon with their help, right? Because I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So you start bringing partners in and you say, hey, weren't you working on some technology with LED lighting? Could that be applied over here? So guys like Brett Millar, Todd Powell, Scott Hammond, some just really, really smart people, right? That we said, hey, come on, let's take a look and see what we can do. And therefore, did I own a whole company? No. It started with me and another guy at lunch. Well, he was one of the first guys in, right? So that's something that I believe in. So again, what did we learn along the way? Well, these are the wavelengths of the sun on a perfect day, midsummer, right in the middle of the crops, right? That's what it looks like. But is that what plants need? Nope. Fascinating, right? Oh, wait a minute. So if we didn't try to replicate the sun, which is what every other light company in the world was doing, and instead we just asked, well, what does a plant need? And just gave the light, the wavelength, just what the plant needed, then we wouldn't be using as much heat. We wouldn't be using as much energy, right? So cool. Right? The company ended up with 56 patents pending at the end of the day. It was super fun. And again, I mean, I'm the guy that, was knocking on the doors and kind of finding out if there was an opportunity in the marketplace, but I had people that were a lot smarter than I was to figure all this stuff out. Eventually, we were able to have the plants grow right into the lights because the lights had virtually no heat. It's pretty incredible. Which meant that you could grow, instead of on 6 rows like you saw at the farm in Chicago, we could grow on 24 rows, okay? And eventually, we were going seed to harvest in 7 days. Pretty fun. But the history is that we asked ourselves, do you want to sell leafy greens to local grocery stores and restaurants? No. But what is around here in our area, we're from Alpine, Utah County, that maybe could use what we're talking about building. What about nutraceutical companies? So we started knocking on doors of nutraceutical companies, and one of those was a company that I was really intrigued with what we were doing because they grow these purple flowers all over the valley. And they were like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And so I don't know if you can tell, but these are a couple of our trays. So they had a product called einkorn. And again, we asked them, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you do? Well, we would grow einkorn. It's an ancient grain, has incredible nutrient properties, but we can never grow enough to have a marketplace for it. If we could grow enough, it'd be unbelievable. Okay, it took them 6 to 8 weeks to grow in a greenhouse. 6 to 8 weeks to grow, and they had miles and miles of greenhouses, but they could never grow enough. Okay? So we said, well, give us some of your einkorn seeds and let's see if we can do something about it. All we had was an abandoned office, and we had 2 racks with 4 trays on each rack. So we seeded it with einkorn, and I think the first time it was 12 days later, we walked back in with those trays. In the middle of theirs, which greener, lusher, fuller, everything, beautiful, right? They threw them in the garbage because they were like, there's no way, this takes 6 to 8 weeks to grow. We just gave you these. And we said, well, I don't know, what do you want to do? Do it again. So we did it again, right? We finally said, look, let's take some of your product, some of our product, we'll label it AB, send it to Covance Labs in Chicago, get the information back and see what happens. Well, guess what? Our einkorn that eventually grew in 9 days, we got it down to 10 days and eventually 9, but had triple-digit increases in nutrients almost across the board. It was absolutely amazing. Okay? So, hey, we've got something here. Pretty cool. So then we started to make some assumptions. If we can do this, then we could have this, right? And that's what you do. So for einkorn, first of all, if we can reduce the amount of heat, right, it could be a profitable industry. We could grow profitably indoors. Germination times. Let me just talk to you about that really, really quick. So when we first started, folks were going to seed to harvest in 28 days. And then probably a year and a half into it, we heard of a company in Japan that was going to seed to harvest in 21 days. And it was amazing. But 5 days of those 21 days was in germination, where you put the seed in complete and utter darkness. Darkness, after 5 days, the plant pokes out of the seeds, called germinating, right? So we had an assumption, and the assumption was, well, we're a bunch of entrepreneurs. We don't believe you when you tell us you have to do this. So tell you what, let's put the seeds under our lights, and maybe it will agitate the seeds enough, wavelength, make them kind of crazy, and poof, they'll germinate. And maybe they'll do it faster. Guess what? We were germinating in 3 days right out of the gate. We got rid of all of our dark rooms. And eventually we were germinating in 18 hours. Okay? Because we just didn't believe the status quo. And again, that's what entrepreneurs do. They kick the tires and they go, it says this over here, but why not just try it? And that's kind of what happened. So again, labor was massive labor costs in all the indoor farms that I told you about. Increased harvest rates, then it can be a profitable industry. Again, for einkorn, we said, hey, if we can grow einkorn, we get our first contract, right? And it was interesting because after we got back the studies and all that kind of stuff, that company, they said, we still don't believe you. You got to be doing something. We don't believe it. And so, they kind of bowed out, which was their loss. But anyway, I'll kind of run through these really quick. But basically, could we make a food machine that disrupts the world? And could we put that food machine and automate it so that you don't have the labor in a third world country with solar panels that would literally be a food machine where people would put trays on their head, empty trays, walk up, put it in the food machine, get their food out of the tray, put it on their head full of nutrient-rich food, and go home. That's kind of the stuff we were talking about. So if this, then, if we could do this, what would it look like? Oh, you know what? Let me just show you. I'll just run through this really quick. So basically then we started using software that automated the lights, etc. And essentially the whole idea was you give the plant exactly what it needs throughout its entire life cycle. okay? Seed to root to stem to harvest, okay? So pretty fun. No, local grocery stores and restaurants is not what we were into. We wanted to go to nutraceutical industry, and I won't go into this, but we were doing some fun stuff. We were the first company in the world to do a lot of this. And eventually we got to a tagline that said growth perfection. Let me just show you, do you want to navigate for me? A couple of really quick videos, they're about 2 minutes long. So the first one is, let's see. So it's the FB Groviv teaser. When we made this video, we only had lights. It's the only thing we had. Funny, because you're going to see the lights in the video, but that's
One day, technology will grow life anywhere, independent of Mother Nature. And the human fingerprint will be a beautiful trademark. One day, the world will eat as sure as the sun rises, making starvation a thing of the past. One day, agricultural disease will only be found in textbooks. And growing something more profitable will also mean making it more safe. One day, we'll crack the code to perfect growth. One day is today.
This next one is about 30 seconds, and it shows you what the end result was of this project. Completely automated indoor system. Put your tray in one end, and 7 days later, or in other words, perpetually, you have a food machine. And again, you can see that there are different color lights on different levels, right? Giving the plants exactly what they need when they need it. Okay, so questions? I can talk a little bit about the company that I'm involved with now, but I would love to answer any questions you might have. Yeah.
So with all this technology, are there not going to be any side effects? You trying to cheat nature?
Say that again.
With all the technology surrounding this, are there no side effects? You're not using the direct sun, but using technology to come up with new plants. Are there not going to be any side effects?
Oh, you know what? That's a really good question. That's a really, really good question. So we didn't do anything synthetic. We didn't do any genetic modifications of the plants whatsoever. We used the exact same rays as the sun, okay, specific rays. So it was all natural, all plant-based. Excellent what was that? No pesticides, no chemicals. So in fact, in a 25 by 25 space, our fully automated farms produce the equivalent of 100 acres of farmland using 2% of the water without any herbicides, pesticides, or chemicals. So great question. Any others? That was really important to us. Yeah.
So John, one of my questions is, this seems like so huge. Like this literally should be changing the world as we know it. What's happening with it? I mean, where's it going?
Good question.
How many did they build? Like, about
Yeah, they did. And so yeah, we got bought out by a public company, and so they did build several around the world. And as far as why, I don't know. Is it greed that keeps people from doing the right thing? I don't know. I mean, a lot of folks, when they saw this, it was kind of like, that could solve world hunger. Well, yeah, feed and nourish the world. I remember being laughed at by the venture capital folks when they would meet with us, and we would say, our vision is to feed and nourish the world. And they'd go, man, you guys think you're all that, don't you? You're a bunch of nobodies, man. You're a bunch of young entrepreneurs. Well, yeah, maybe, but we had a vision. And, and I still think that vision is reality. And whether it gets to the point of, solving world hunger or gets into the third world, and you can look at it as a foundation that does this in a nonprofit way, or you can look at it as a money maker. And those are two very, very different things. And I, maybe they got lost along the way in terms of, looking at how they can make a buck on this versus what we were trying to do. I don't know. But I was long gone. So, I was in the transition team and then I was out. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, I didn't choose. I was invited. So when a big giant company, I should explain, when a big giant company, buys a little company, we're all entrepreneurs, and we have a lot of different hats that we wear, and we solve problems and things like that. And those big giant companies have very, very specific, specified people to come in and do certain things. So they had a team all ready to go that they wanted to kind of take the business to the next level. And so I was involved in that transition, and then they took over. Yeah, it wasn't a negative thing. I anticipated that. So, yes.
How much did you sell it for?
The final valuation was a little over $30 million. So, but again, I didn't have a whole grape. Right? I mean, it's important to understand we had 9 partners at that point, and worth every single bit of what they did. It was awesome. Any other questions? So, you want me to tell you what I'm doing now? So just for fun, so I've got a company called EarthSpring, or we have a company called EarthSpring, and it is, I guess we can just run through really, really quick. I'll be just a couple of minutes here, but we have a vision at EarthSpring, and it's not to feed and nourish the world, but it's in healthcare again. Our story is that I was writhing in bed in pain with COVID and kidney stones all at the same time for on about the 3 to 4 week time period when I was in bed. I was looking at a company that I was consulting for, and they had 42,000 square feet of indoor grow space. So I was consulting for them because I knew a little bit about indoor growing, and realized that we had all the resources that we need. We had a lab that had millions of dollars worth of equipment, chemists, things like that, and all we were doing was creating wholesale products and selling them on wholesale market. And I was in a lot of pain. My siblings have been in a lot of pain. We've had a lot of healthcare challenges. Some of our employees and their families, cancer, you name it, we've had a lot of healthcare challenges. And so because we were suffering, I came in and said, you know what? Our new vision is to help millions of people heal using non-addictive plant-based medicine. Okay, so all the folks that are addicted to opioids and things like that, we want to help them have a stepping stone down and be able to do some different things. So what did I learn through everything that you saw? I learned the voice of the customer rules, and therefore, if I can get 10 or 20 or 30 people who are struggling with anxiety to get into a trial and use 50 years worth of case studies and research that are already out there. This is literally, these are all case studies. Then I can start with a formulation that I think might work because of the case studies for anxiety, for depression, for sleeplessness, for any number of ailments. And so these are all many of the products that we have now. But we started with the first 5, and we didn't sell a single product until we were in trials for over 12 months. Very proud of that. Okay, we were going through a lot of other stuff at the time, but I didn't want to sell a product that I just slapped a label on. Okay, as you know, there are a lot of CBD companies out there. We're not a CBD company. We're a health and wellness company. CBD happens to be one ingredient in our products, but it's one of many different ingredients. And when you say, well, why did you use essential oils or natural terpenes or healing herbs in this particular product? I'd say because that's what worked in the trials. We got the feedback back, that's what worked, and that's why we have the product. So every single bit of, every one of our products relates back to those decades of research that you saw.
Explain what those products are. They have a name.
Right here?
You can't always know what that means.
Okay, so inner peace, release stress and anxiety. Luna, sleep peacefully. Intima, increased desire and arousal. Panacea, full spectrum pain relief. And Lul is soothes infants and toddlers. Unbelievable, you guys. This stuff works so well, and it doesn't put them to sleep. You rub it on their feet, and within minutes, they go from screaming bloody murder to totally relaxed, calm, stop crying. They don't go to sleep. They're just hanging out. And I can say that because my grandkids. So this is kind of, here are all the other companies compared to us. And it boils down to, again, the trials and the fact that we use, our products are 5 times more potent than anything on the market that I've seen. And it's because that's what worked in the trials. So kind of fun. Recognize the voice of the customer, right? The trials is just us listening to customers who are struggling with a particular ailment and going back, reformulating, that didn't work, reformulating, that didn't work, going back. And that's how we came up with that. And again, I went out and found people that are a lot smarter than me. Our chemist, Mike Manley, is brilliant, right? And I let him do all that research, and he's so good at it. I would be terrible at it. But, we come up with the hypotheses, and then we test it, and then we come up with a product. So that's it. Any questions? Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.